Hi guys, welcome back. I'd like to revisit an old video of mine, Forecast GDP Growth in Stata, and this video has done really well on my channel. It has over 17,000 views. In this video I forecast GDP growth using a simple AR1 model, and basically I show that the model likes to revert back to the mean of the time series variable, in this case GDP growth. You can see here, I tried to forecast GDP growth after 2020, after the hit of the pandemic. And in my model, after several years, the forecast would slowly return to the sample mean. Now there's some problems with this because in reality, we had a large jump in GDP growth in 2021, which I show here. So this is a Python plot, the same GDP growth series, with my previous forecasts in yellow, along with some confidence intervals. We see this big jump in actual GDP growth here at the top, over 6%. So in this video, I'd like to show you how to forecast in Python using ChatGPT, and I'll go through some of the iterations I made to try and capture this huge jump in GDP growth. And with some help from ChatGPT, we can get a better forecast here. So let's go through ChatGPT. I'll show you a little bit of what I did, and you can get an idea of how to forecast in Python with ChatGPT. So if you watched my previous video about GDP growth and using Python to generate some plots and calculate averages and moving averages with ChatGPT, stay in that same chat with ChatGPT. This is the previous chat I had in that video. And the very next question I asked was, can you help me forecast an AR1 model of growth using the stats models package? The stats models package is popular when forecasting in Python. So basically, ChatGPT will give you the code to fit an AR1 model using autoreg, forecast future values, and then plot the actual and forecasted values. And here's the AR1 model, and here's the code ChatGPT gives me. So we have some of the same functions here. We read in the CSV file into a data frame. We create the autoregressive model. We fit the model, and then specify that the forecast will be for the next 5 years. We create a date range for the forecasted years, and then combine the actual and forecasted data, and then plot. So I basically copied this from ChatGPT, pasted right into my editor, Control S and saved, and then ran. Let me go ahead and run it for you. And here's the model. So after the dotted line is when the forecast begins. 2021, we have this huge jump in GDP growth. You can see here after 2024, the GDP growth hangs around the average of the series. There's not much movement here because in 2024, the GDP growth was already close to the sample average. But I'm curious how I could capture this huge jump in GDP growth, because my previous model, it didn't capture that. So I asked ChatGPT if it could forecast for me, just as in that previous video. We have the forecast start in 2021, and just like in that video, we have this movement back to the sample average. Now compared to the actual values of growth, these later forecasts are not that bad. They're not that different from what we would expect. But this first one in 2021, we just didn't capture that very well. So I thought, well, let's look back at the series. What's a common pattern in the GDP growth series? What happens typically after there's a recession, after there's GDP growth that's negative? So let's go back to 1982. We have negative GDP growth here. It's close to negative 2%. But then the next year, GDP jumps up to above 4%. So we have this rebound of GDP growth after a recession. Same in 1991. We just dipped below zero, still negative, but we had a rebound, about 3.5%. Let's fast forward to 2009. We have less than negative 2% GDP growth. And the next year we have a rebound above 2% GDP growth. So there seems to be a pattern here. Whenever there's a recession and there's negative GDP growth, there seems to be a rebound. And that was the case in 2020 and 2021. We had this huge rebound. So ask ChatGPT, what if we put a dummy variable in for the years of negative GDP growth? And that's this rebound rule. And so the forecast here is the OLS model, and I have two autoregressive terms, two lags of GDP growth, and we have this rebound rule. You can see the forecast here, we have higher GDP growth following this huge dip, but it's nowhere close to the above 6% growth that we had in 2021. But we've made a little progress. And the other forecasts here, they're not that great. into the future. So I made little changes to the model. I changed it back to an AR1 model with just one lag, and we kept the rebound. And we don't see as large of a jump here in 2021 with our forecast. We see this kind of drift down. So I thought, okay, let's change it up a little bit. Let's add a trend term. Because the trend could help account for some of the drift, but that really didn't seem to help us much here. We do have this value in 2021 that's closer to the sample mean, but the other terms here want to go downward. They want to drift downward still. I changed the model again. I got rid of the trend term, and I just had the AR1 model with a rebound. But there's something different about this rebound. You can see the rebound here in 2021. It's higher than the sample average, which is good. That's what I wanted. We do have some movement back to the sample mean. Let's check out some of the code to see what's different about this rebound. Well, first I tried the pandemic dummy variable. So the rebound, before it was the rebound, was a dummy variable for the pandemic. And that was just a dummy variable for 2020. Same here in the next iteration. It's always defined as a dummy variable until I get to that last forecast that I showed you. In this case, it's no longer a dummy variable, but it's a proportional rebound variable. So basically, I define it as the negative of the previous year's growth, if the previous year's growth was negative, if it was less than 0, which would then be a positive effect on GDP growth, and that would be the rebound. So if it was -2, we would have a +2. So we have some proportionality. If there's a really large decline, we would also have a really large rebound. If it was a relatively small decline in growth, we would have a relatively small bounce back in growth. Eventually, I figured out a decent modeling of the proportional rebound that I liked, and it kind of fit the model a little bit better than the other variations. So here's the forecast with the proportional rebound, forecast starting in 2021. We do have this rebound effect that's sizable, given the sizable decline in GDP growth. Then we have movement back to the sample average pretty quick, which is what we would expect. 2009 to 2010, we had this sizable jump back. I think that models the recovery of the pandemic pretty well. Let's check out the code a bit. We can look exactly at this proportional rebound in this model. So what's in the model here? We have lagged growth, and we have the proportional rebound. It's that same specification I mentioned before. It's the negative of previous year's GDP growth. If previous year's GDP growth was negative, we create a training data frame, which is a skill you learn with the data analysis, is to create a training data set, in this case a training data frame, where you can make changes, do forecasts, whatever, and keep the original data intact and allow you to make comparisons. So the actual regression model is here. It has a constant and just that proportional rebound. And while that seems pretty simple, the AR1 model that I originally had, it didn't have a significant coefficient on it. So we'd probably be okay with just the constant and the proportional rebound. So here in the forecast years, the proportional rebound is also conditional. So it's going to be 0 unless the last year's growth was less than 0. So in doing this, I did all of the work here in ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to make changes, try different models, and then plot the models, and it would offer me this code. I would copy the code, paste it into my program editor. With each change to the model, I saved it as a new program. So I go from forecast 2 to forecast 3 to forecast 4. So I keep the previous model just in case I don't like the new iteration. And I do this with all the programs that I do. This way you don't change your code and save over something that you did previously that worked. Also, sometimes I upload the plot from Python into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT recognizes the plot. Here I explain I don't capture the bounce back and growth in 2021. Do you have an idea how to capture that? So I'm going to scroll down here. I'll just show you the end. And for that last iteration, I uploaded the CSV file to ChatGPT, and it actually made the plots and forecasts for me, and compared forecasts of GDP growth with previous episodes of negative growth. Here's the 1982 to 1983 episode. In 1982, GDP growth dipped below 0, but there's a limitation in data, so ChatGPT couldn't forecast there. Here's the 91 to 92 episode. 1991 had GDP growth just below 0, and we had this bounce back. And you can see the forecasts of an AR1 model along with a forecast with a rebound. They're very similar. The 2009 to 2010 episode, forecast with the AR1 model actually did better than the forecast with just the rebound and the constant. And we know the 2020 to 2021 model did better with the proportional rebound in getting that bounce back year. And so ChatGPT plotted, it made those forecasts for me and laid everything out nicely for me here. Here's the AR1 forecast and then the forecast with rebound, and then the actual growth in 1992. And here's another episode, 2009 to 2010. So if you're doing some forecasting, I recommend you give Python a try and give ChatGPT a try. Also, as you're making different models, you want to check the statistics, you want to do different tests, and ChatGPT can give you the code to do all of those tests. So with ChatGPT's help, this analysis really didn't take that long. I was able to try different models, plot the different models, I could check statistics of different models and easily compare them, and I stayed within that chat from ChatGPT from the last video with GDP growth. So ChatGPT does have memory. It will remember your queries, it will remember some of your data, the models you've been building and trying, but it doesn't remember everything. So I have just a free trial here. I believe if you pay for a better version of ChatGPT, it will have better memory because sometimes it forgets things and you have limitations on what you can upload to ChatGPT, like with graphs or CSV files and whatnot. So I hope you guys like this. That's going to be it for today. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Give me a comment below. I'll have some more videos coming out soon. I'll see you guys. All right, bye-bye.